is I'm going to be recording this event because I like to give value to other people that haven't been able to make it today, and by allowing me to record this, then I can do that. If, however, afterwards somebody doesn't want to appear on the recording, then please just let me know. Just drop me an email, and I've got some fancy software that I can remove people from the video. So just let me know if that's an issue. But hopefully everybody's happy with that. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about procrastination. So I hope that's what you're all expecting to hear about. And I'm just going to talk to you a bit about understanding what it is, where it can come from, what can cause it, and then give you lots of tips and strategies on how you can actually deal with that and stop doing it, basically. So hopefully all that sounds good. And just to put you at ease, because I know a lot of these events, people tend to spend half of the time trying to sell you their latest product or service. So just to reassure you, that's not what today is about. Today is all about me giving you some value and some tips and strategies that you can take away with you. And so you can just sit back and relax and listen to what I'm going to say without the fear of me sort of trying to make a sales pitch. If, however, at the end of the session, you want to carry on a conversation with me, I'll be telling you how you can do that at the end, but that'll just be a couple of minutes towards the end. Okay. So there's 3 requests I do have of you today, if that's okay. One is, if possible, can you stay to the end? Because I will be giving you lots of value. And understandably, if you do need to leave early, that's absolutely fine. And you'd be more than welcome to come and attend another workshop that I'll be running later on. So my plan is to run workshops twice a month. So I'll be doing one in the week and one at the weekends, as this one is. Okay. Secondly, a request to be coachable. So I will be asking lots of questions as we go through this, and there will be some exercises to do. And there might be some new ideas or new approaches to things that you haven't heard before. So my request of you is just to be open-minded to what I'm going to talk about. And I sometimes liken it to like wearing a new jacket, or a jacket I might suggest would look good on you. It might be a style that you've not tried before, but until you actually try it on and see what it feels like, see what it looks like, you won't know if it'll be for you or not. So just be open-minded to what we're going to be talking about. And then lastly is just to sort of be as present as possible and be interactive, because as I said, we'll be doing some exercises. And I like to see your faces as well. So if anybody's happy to switch their camera on if they haven't already, that would be really lovely, because I'd much rather talk to people's faces than just a few names on the screen. So that would be great if you wouldn't mind doing that. Okay. All of that okay with everybody? Okay, yep. Great, good. So before we get into the main part of the workshop, I thought it would be quite nice for you guys to get to know each other a little better. So I'm just going to drop you all into some separate breakout rooms, and just to ask you to introduce yourselves to each other, and also just sort of say who you are, where you're from, and what it is you'd like to get out of today's session. Is that okay with everybody? Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm going to drop you into groups of 3, and I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to just introduce yourselves to each other. Okay. And again, hoping the technology cooperates. And I can do maths too. Ooh. And Daniela seems to have appeared in the group twice now, so I'm not sure whether she's having technical issues. Oops. Okay. Okay. Right, that's all looking good. I think there's a couple of groups of 2, but the rest of them are 3. So like I said, I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes just to introduce yourselves and say what you're hoping to get out of today. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. I think you might need to press the button. Yeah, okay, great. Technical problems today. So all introduced yourselves to each other. There's some giggling as you came back, so I'm assuming you had a good time doing that. Okay.
I just confessed that I used to share an office with you.
We did many years ago. Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully when lockdown's over, we can catch up for a coffee, see what's been going
Yeah,
on for the last couple of years.
that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Just one question I want to ask people before we get started, because I know today's obviously we're focusing on procrastination, but it's a question that has kind of cropped up time and again with people that I've worked with and workshops that I've done before. And it's just really, has anybody ever thought about what it actually takes to make us happy before? Because it can be very different things for different people. And some people end up having a goal of being happy, but if I was to say to you that you could be happy at any time you chose, how would that sound?
Mm-hmm.
That sound good? Yep. Sean's
Mm-hmm.
grinning. Okay. Well, I'm just going to do a quick exercise with you just to prove that you can be happy whenever you want to be. And this is something you can use whenever you want to. You may not want to always do this in public, but you can choose to be happy whenever you want to. So, so just as a contrast to start with, I'm going to get you to think about something sad, and as well as thinking about something sad, so it could just be you just had a miserable day last week, or you're just a bit fed up with lockdown, or anything like that. And then I also want you to adopt a physiology of being sad. So that could be that your shoulders are a bit rounded, your head's down, your mouth might be drooping at the corners, but just sort of adopt that physiology of not feeling great either. Okay, all right. So we don't want to stay like that for too long. So if we now move on to the opposite thing. So now I want you to think of something that makes you happy, whether that's spending time with a friend, family, could be thinking about a holiday, anything like that. Okay, everybody's physiology's changed automatically. Then what I'd like you to do is to put your arms in the air in a big V shape. Okay, and I want you to look up at the ceiling, just as is comfortable, and put a big smile on your face and have those happy thoughts, those really happy thoughts, okay? And stay in that position. And I then, everybody stay in that position. And I then want you to try and think of those sad thoughts that you had before. Okay? And you'll probably find, okay, you can all relax now. And you'll probably find that it's actually impossible to have those sad thoughts when you've got that physiology of being happy. Yep, did you all find that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's just to prove to you that you can be happy whenever you want to be. And it's not necessarily always about the thoughts that you've got going on. You can actually change your mood just by the physiology that you adopt. So if you just put your shoulders back, put your head in the air, put a big smile on your face, you automatically feel 100 times better. Okay, that worked for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Okay, so like I said, nothing to do with procrastination, but it was just something that's been occurred to me over the last week or so. All right. So now on to the bit that you're all here for. So I'm assuming that at some point in your lives, or maybe even going on quite currently, that you've all procrastinated. So I know I have, definitely. Yeah. I think it's something that we all do, even if we're the best at keeping on top of these things, then I think it can be a little bit of a challenge for people at some point or another. And I did actually have to laugh at myself yesterday. Some of you might know that I'm a runner. In fact, I was talking about this to Daniela yesterday, and I decided on Friday night that yesterday morning I was going to go for a run. And when I got up in the morning, I had this battle for about 20 minutes in my head of, shall I go? No, I'll put it off till tomorrow. Will I go? No. And I went backwards and forwards for about 20 minutes and then suddenly thought, what on earth am I doing? I'm running a workshop tomorrow about procrastinating, and I'm doing exactly that. So I had to give myself a bit of a kick up the backside, but I did actually get myself out of the front door and did my run. So just to prove, even though I know all of this stuff, it can still creep in if we allow it to. It's just firstly being aware of it. Okay. So what is procrastination? Anybody got any thoughts on what a definition of procrastination might be that they're happy to share? Susan or Daniela? Susan first, and then we'll go to Daniela.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. To me, it's always knowing I have tasks to do and then finding something else to do instead of
Yep.
completing a task that I either don't want to do, find scary, or just dread for some reason.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Absolutely. Thanks, Susan. Anything to add to that, Daniela?
It was quite similar, putting things off or suddenly finding all sorts of other things to do, like housework or,
Yeah.
you know,
It's amazing how
reorganizing
interesting-
things. So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing how interesting the washing up can suddenly seem at
Yeah.
times.
I
isn't
have
it?
to say, excuse me, Shuna, I never do housework because of something else.
Oh,
I just
okay.
want to be really clear that I never do housework instead of a business task.
There's
In
always
fact,
something more
housework is
interesting than
probably
that.
one of the things I procrastinate on.
Right, okay. Thank you both. Brilliant. So a couple of definitions are, it's as both Daniela and Susan said, trouble persuading yourself to do the things that you should or would like to do, or instead of working on important, meaningful tasks, you find yourself performing trivial tasks instead, unless you're Susan, and then that's not the housework, so that's fine. Okay. And interestingly, studies have shown with people that are a bit later on in life that they generally regret the things that they haven't done rather than the things they have done. So it's just an interesting thought to reflect on, that all those things that we're putting off, when we reflect back on our lives when we get a bit older, we might actually sort of not be too happy with ourselves for having put those things off. Okay. Especially if they're things that we wanted to do to make our lives richer or happier or whatever. Okay, so just to share again, hoping the technology will work. I'm just going to share my screen with you for a second, because I just want to share with you what this can sometimes look like. Everybody see my screen okay? Yep, great, good, something's working then. So I've put procrastination at the top of this page, but this actually applies for whether it's something you are achieving or something that you're actually putting off due to procrastination. But basically, we all have a mindset, whether that at any given time is something that's positive or negative. And if it's a mindset where we're putting things off that we don't want to do for whatever reason, that can be a negative mindset. And that's then going to definitely impact on the actions that we take, or usually with procrastination, actions that we don't take, because even sitting still and doing nothing is an action. And then that mindset and those actions are going to impact on the results that we get out of life. And like I said, that can work the opposite way as well. So if we've got a really positive mindset and we're taking lots of actions, then we can get the outcomes and results that we're striving for. Okay. Then this may be something that looks fairly familiar to you, but some steps of procrastination. So if we've got a task that we want to do, I know if any of us have done any studying, this tends to be a bit of a pattern or a report that you've got to get written for work, that you start off by thinking you've got loads of time to actually do this task and just get lulled into a false sense of security that you've got plenty of time to get it done. Then you just start to think, well, I could do it, but there's all these nice things as a box set on Netflix that I want to watch instead, so that could take over. And then you start giving yourself excuses, like you need to cuddle the cat or the dog or whatever, or go for a walk or a run. And then we enter this phase of denial that we've got this huge amount of time to get this task done, even if it's done, then we're only approaching it the night before, and that just doing an all-nighter and drinking coffee will get you through. And then if you're running out of time, you might hit this crisis point, and then it just goes round and repeat. So any of that looking familiar to people as a pattern they might run? Yep, I can see a few people nodding. Yep, I think everybody's done it. Okay. And so let's start to have a look at some of the reasons and causes of procrastination. First one I came up with was actually overwhelm. Is that some people can hit overwhelm, they've got too many things to do, and that can lead them to just being stuck and not knowing where to start with things. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yeah, okay. And quite often when I've been talking to clients or working with people, and they've said to me that they're overwhelmed, quite often an often response I get is, what are you overwhelmed about? And they will say everything. Because normally when you hit a state of overwhelm, you can't see the wood for the trees and everything just seems like it's too much. So if ever you're in that situation, one good question to ask yourself is, what specifically are you overwhelmed with? Because quite often it'll just be one particular area of your life or just one task that just seems too big to handle that will be causing that overwhelm. So it's good to actually sort of break it down to what is actually causing that overwhelm. And then it seems, rather than thinking everything's overwhelming, it can then make it a bit easier for you to then hone in exactly where you need to take some action. And sometimes it's just taking that first step. If you liken it to a staircase, you can often think you've got to climb all of those stairs to get to where you need to get to. But if you just start by focusing on the step that's in front of you and then taking the next step after that, it can just make it seem a lot more achievable. And but sometimes that first step is the hardest. So once you get past that stage, things should become a little bit easier. And there's also a saying of, how do you eat an elephant? Anybody know the answer to that one? It's just one. Anybody want to?
Yeah. Is it one bite at a time or something?
Yeah,
like
one bite
Yes,
at a time.
that's it. Yeah, one piece at a time. Absolutely. So rather than trying to tackle the whole thing, it's just breaking it down into smaller chunks, so it seems more achievable. Okay. So if you have got an awful lot of tasks to do, there's a couple of ways you could actually approach this. So one is you could just think of some really easy tasks that are on your to-do list and just do those first. Because I find even if you just do a few things, it can make you feel like you're making some progress. So you could just identify some easy things, whether that's just taking the mail to the mailbox or sending a couple of emails or making a phone call, anything like that that's just really simple to do. Can be just nice and satisfying. I know when I have a to-do list, I like to cross things off because it just makes me feel like I'm making progress. So that's one way to do it. Secondly, you could write down absolutely everything that you've got to do in your life at the moment. Just do yourself one big to-do list, and then you could start to put those into a priority. One way I've approached that before is I've had the numbers 1, 2 and 3 and just categorized them into, like, 1 is the most high priority, 2nd's medium priority, and 3 doesn't really matter. And you can put a 1, 2 and 3 next to each item, and then take all of the number 1s and then decide out of those which are the most urgent and just tackle them in that order. You could prioritize them 1 to 10 if you've got 10 items in your number 1 list, if that makes sense. And you could tackle it that way. Okay. Any questions about overwhelm or any observations from anybody? Does anybody see themselves in that? Yeah. Okay. Secondly, on causes of procrastination could be beliefs that you have about yourself. So would anybody here describe themselves as a perfectionist? Yeah, and Sean was going to say yes. And Judy, yeah, okay. So one thing that to understand about perfectionism is it's simply a behaviour. So sometimes it can be helpful to look at what's kind of underneath that behaviour. And I'm not saying this is the case with everybody, but sometimes it can be a belief that you have about yourself that isn't supportive. So some people that I've worked with who are perfectionists, it's turned out that they've actually got a belief that they don't think they're good enough. And like I said, I'm not saying this is the same for everybody. And by having that belief, it means that they're not actually putting themselves out there to do what they want to do for fear of getting things wrong. So they hold themselves to this really high standard of having to be perfect at everything for fear of being found out that they're not good enough. And that can often keep people going around in a loop. It's a quite common thing I've seen with clients of mine. And some people can equate their performance to their self-worth. And if they've got a belief that they're not really worthy and they get things wrong, that can have a big impact on people, to the point where people can stop taking action because they're worried that they'll get things wrong and it will reflect on them really badly. Okay. And that can often lead people to think that they're a failure. So there's a saying that I like to use, which I could probably get Sian to repeat, because I know we've had this conversation before about, and I know it's something that she quite likes, is a different way of looking at failure. Yeah, pennies dropped, yeah.
So it's feedback.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because I know I've mentioned this on a previous couple of workshops that Sian's been on. And so rather than thinking of things as being a failure, or that you think of yourself as being a failure, just look at it as it hasn't quite gone right that time and just use it as feedback. And by looking at it as feedback, it firstly sounds a lot better, but also means that you can try that again, but just do it slightly differently next time. Okay. Any questions about that or any observations? Okay. And then thirdly, it could just be simply down to fears that we have. I mean, these can often be tied to beliefs that we have as well. But it could just simply be that we're afraid of things going wrong. Quite commonly, people are afraid of failure, or people have even a fear of success, and that can keep people stuck and not taking action. So you end up avoiding doing those things just because you don't want to feel that feeling of fear. And the problem with that is it obviously just gets you nowhere, because you just keep getting stuck in that loop. Okay. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. So I'm just going to give you an exercise to do. And so probably, I know there are lots of other reasons as well, but those three seem to be the main reasons for people procrastinating, is that they're either overwhelmed, they've got beliefs that don't support them, or they've got a fear of something that's stopping them do something. So I'm kind of going to assume everybody's got something. So could everybody just put their hands up that they recognise themselves in at least one of those three things? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Nearly everybody then. Okay. So I'm just going to give you an exercise to do. So if you identify with one of those three things, either overwhelm, a belief, or fear, just have a think about what the cause is of that and what may be behind that as a reason for you to procrastinate. And then also have a think about if there's anything in your life that's really stopping you do. There's something that you really want to do, that overwhelm, that fear, or that belief is stopping you doing it. And then now that you've got a little bit of insight into that, and you've acknowledged that could be the reason you're procrastinating, just have a think about if there's anything that you could do differently as a result of that. Okay, and then we can have a chat about it afterwards. Is that clear to everybody? Okay, so I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, has everybody got something? Yeah, okay. So what I'd like you to do now is I'm going to drop you all into another breakout room, and if you're happy to, if you want to share with other people in your room about what it is that you really want to do, what it is that's really stopping you, and just some ideas that you've got already of how you could do things differently. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. So I will just drop you all into a breakout room. Is anybody not clear about that, or is that okay? Yeah, okay, good. All right, I'll give you, going to be in groups of 3 again, so I'll give you about 6 minutes, so you've got a couple of minutes each to discuss that, okay? All right, I'll see you again shortly. And Antonia, I'm just going to assign you to a room because I just realised you weren't in one before, so let me drop you into room 2. Oh, with you in a second, Antonia. Let me just do that. Okay. There should be a button appear for you to join them now, so I'll see you shortly. Was that long enough for everybody to have a say?
Not quite, but I'm sure we can, and we'll
Yeah.
finish.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind for next time and give you a bit of extra time. Okay. So did anybody have any insights or aha moments that they're happy to share?
I'll share.
Who's
So that's Hannah.
okay, if we say Hannah and then Judy.
Okay.
Thanks, Hannah.
I think what was quite interesting that we picked up is that, the task was to kind of pick one and, share a moment about that, or, an insight into that. And actually they're all connected.
Oh, okay, that's
so you kind of talk about one,
yeah.
and then you think, but that's because of that, or that's tied into that. So I was talking about fear, and I was talking about, fear, the fear of failure. I think I've got a bit of a fear of making mistakes or not wanting to do something because it's not going to be right or perfect, so there's no point doing it, which ties into perfectionism. And then, the overwhelm kind of ties into that as well. And you think you've got loads to do, or you think you can conquer the world.
Yeah.
And actually, then the fear kind of then plays into that, the fear of failure. So it's just interesting how.
Yeah, they can be very much so, and it's good that you've had that insight. So, is there the situation? Is it something you'd be happy to share with the rest of us?
So I was talking about, I've just moved into 7 months ago, moved into a new house, we've bought it as a bit of a project house. And so, and I had this dream of being like this upcycler, and I was going to, we've got loads of decorating to do. We've got some building work to do. So there's things that I can't do.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm quite bad for looking at social media, and then the fear of kind of thinking my house is never going to look like that, or I can't do those wonderful things like lots of people can do, and the fear of failure not putting me off doing it because I think it's not going to be how I want it to be, or so the fear of making a mistake is putting me off doing lots of things.
Right, so it's probably not just with the house, then it kind of ripples through other areas of your life.
Yeah.
And is there anything sort of major that it's stopping you doing? Obviously I understand with the house, but is there anywhere else in your life that it's stopping you to do what you want to do?
Probably not that I'm 100% comfortable sharing here, but I think there's probably some career barriers there that have put me off moving forward or doing other things because I think, I'm not going to get that job, or not necessarily knowing what I want to do. So
okay.
Yeah.
And that that fear of failure, has that been in your life for a long time?
Parts of it, yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
And does it remind you of anything that's happened previously in your life that might have triggered this as kind of the seed of where it all started?
God, we're getting deep now, aren't we?
That's okay. No pressure to do that.
No. It's fine. A few things, I guess. Just, maybe not carrying things on as much as I wanted to. I did French at university and haven't really done a lot with it since because I didn't sort of pursue a career in it necessarily. And there's probably a barrier there with not wanting to take that further or not, not carrying it on, and then the fear of not being able to speak it again. Parts of that. If I was to go deeper, probably because I was kind of like top of the class at school, and so everyone always expecting you to do the right thing,
right,
and to be the best all the time. And then when you kind of grow up or go to university, you kind of realise that there's loads of other people around you that are not necessarily better than you, but like can do the same things as you, and you're not that. You're like a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it okay to just
ask you that fear of comparison all the time?
And would it be okay to ask you a question about when you were at school, from what you just mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were kind of top of the class and didn't want to stand out, I'm assuming that's kind of what was behind that, not wanting to stand out.
Part of it, yeah. I was never like the show off or anything like that necessarily.
And quite often our minds can sort of present us with an incident that happened when you're asked these kind of questions. So is there any particular incident that happened at school that made you feel a bit different or singled out or about being top of the class?
Not particularly. I wouldn't say it was like a negative thing.
Okay.
I think it was just an expectation that was upon myself because I was, always expected to be the good one, always expected to be I just was naturally. And so there's probably, that I've gone that expectation that I'll always go down the right path, or, I'll always do the right thing, or I'll always, just achieve well. And actually, maybe I feel that I haven't.
Okay. So what do you think it might be?
There's nothing in particular.
Sorry, say again.
Probably nothing in particular, no particular kind of moment.
Because you mentioned something about an expectation of, just remind me, was it an expectation of being the best or of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in general, I wouldn't say there was a particular moment that made me feel like.
And do you know where that expectation came from?
I guess just the way that people saw me, or that I saw myself, the way my parents saw me. There was no pressure there from them. It was never like overwhelming, but just, the sense that, oh, you're top of the class, you're going to do really well in life, or you're always going to have the great things, or you're always going to do great things, and maybe I don't feel like I'm living up to that.
Okay. Sorry, I think I missed something there. When you said there is an expectation, or there isn't an expectation to live up to those.
There is, yeah. I feel there's an expectation to live up to those.
Right. Okay. And is there anything from the past?
I feel like I'm hogging the workshop here.
Plenty of time. So is there anything that that makes you think of where that expectation came from?
As I said, nothing particular. Just, I guess, the way that people have always seen me. Okay. And no, I wouldn't say there was like, nobody says it to me constantly. It's probably just a way that I think and the way that I see myself. And
I'm just because usually there's something in the past would have triggered that expectation, which can then lead you to have something to live up to. So, but there's nothing that's springing to mind about from family life or from school life that might have triggered that expectation.
No, nothing in particular. As I said, the behaviour that I understand is that, I was top of the class, my brother was top of the class, so we're always the ones that are going to achieve. And nothing. No, I can't pinpoint an event or anything. It's just kind of the way things have been.
Okay. That's fine.
I would say there's anything.
Okay. And generally with that expectation that seems to be there wherever that's come from, does that is that something that's real? Or do you think that's just something that you tell yourself?
I guess a bit of both. Everyone wants the best for themselves, don't they? And everyone's family wants the best for them, and people that you work with, and so I think it is real, but I think how much you dwell on it isn't, and how much you dwell on one part of your life. If I look at other parts of my life, there's other things that I am doing really well in, and that other people might think, oh, she's doing really well in that. Why aren't I doing as well as that in that part of my life, kind of thing. Sorry, I can't remember what the question was now. I was rambling.
I'm not sure I can remember. Oh yeah, so where did that expectation come from?
Yeah. I just think it's how you kind of see yourself. And as I said, if you think that, I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay. And so with those expectations, who decides what those expectations are?
Me, I guess. No one else kind of runs my life. It is my life to lead as I wish and as I should. So I do know that everything's down to me, and to be happy, you have to be just happy with yourself, which I generally am. There's no kind of underlying fear there that I hate myself. So generally, I know that it's all down to me, and I can set my own expectations, and whether that's high or low for certain things.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, is who decides whether they get set to be high or low or indifferent?
I think it's important to measure that and realise what expectations are real and what is realistic. I think sometimes, and especially what I said about social media, I think you can sometimes set your expectations too high unnecessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to what I was saying a bit earlier about the difference between failure and feedback. And it's, if you do set those expectations for yourself, whether they're high, too high, whatever, if you don't reach them, it's then what do you do with them afterwards, or how do you respond to yourself afterwards? So do you then call yourself a failure, or do you just think that's something I need to do a bit differently?
Or I've gone so far and I've got further to go.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so I think, was it Judy you were going to say something next?
I was just going to start off the same as Hannah, really, and saying that I think all those three, the overwhelmingness, certainly I was talking in my session about being overwhelmed, and yes, if I can get myself to do a list and prioritize it in exactly the way you were saying and all that sort of thing, it's incredibly helpful. And that's, I try to make it the first thing that I turn to and do, because it is so helpful. I seem to have lost you, Shuna.
Oh, I'm still here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and it works brilliant for me. I mean, a bit me and how I work in general a bit anyway, because I've having worked with you for a few years. And lists are my best friend.
Oh, they are.
And I was saying that I've even been known to have a to-do list of varying sizes, and in doing one of those tasks, coincidentally do something else, put it on my list and cross it off, because I get so satisfied with crossing something off the list. But it gives you that boost sort of thing. But then again, that kicks into the perfectionism, and learning to accept. And I feel quite a lot older than everybody else, but having been retired a considerable amount of years now, I think the procrastination side gets worse, because I think it was Jenny was saying, I haven't got a manager giving me a deadline. I've only got myself. And so it gets harder and easier to procrastinate, because you haven't got those external pressures or deadlines or whatever to meet. You've only got your own. And that can work in two ways. makes it easier to procrastinate, but equally it makes it harder to achieve, because you're setting the bar, sort of thing. And then if you're a perfectionist, that makes it really hard.
Yes, I can imagine.
Because you're setting that bar so high for yourself, and you haven't got a manager saying, no, it's okay, you don't need to do it that well, you only need to do it this well. And I think we're all our hardest taskmaster, aren't we?
Definitely.
And having worked for nearly 20 years now very closely with a counsellor, I know where all my stuff comes from, and that's from having a god awful mother. But I understand the roots of it all.
Yeah.
That I was told for 40 years that I shouldn't exist, that I was a waste of space and all the rest of it. So it's not surprising that unless I really work hard, I believe that.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it does take a lot of work with yourself, very worthwhile work, to remove those barriers and to set reasonable targets for yourself in terms of perfectionism and all that sort of thing. And then of course that links into the fear of failure, because you've been told you're a failure from the start.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be a failure? So I think those three areas are all very much linked.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, they are, absolutely. The reason I sort of outlined all three of them was because some people can identify with more one than the other, but you're absolutely right, they are all interlinked, absolutely. And it's an interesting point what you said about when you've got all the time in the world to do tasks, that you haven't got the deadlines that give you that pressure. And I can remember when I first started running a business part-time alongside a full-time job, I was talking to somebody who was starting a business and wasn't working, and saying I was very envious of them having the time. And she said that it can be counterproductive for the very reasons that you said. Is that she said, you'll probably do much more than I will with my time, because you've got a finite amount of time that you need to make the most of. Whereas because she'd got all the time in the world to fill it with, she hadn't got that pressure there to get it done. So it is interesting when we haven't got those deadlines, that it can cause us to actually procrastinate even more. Yeah, absolutely.
And then, as I say, you can go too far the other way, and you set yourself too hard a deadline.
Yeah.
Because you think, oh, well, I know what's going to happen because I've got all the time in the world. I'm going to, procrastinate till the cows come home. So you set yourself ridiculous to get something done in half a day, which really you need a day to do.
Yeah.
So it really works against you in both ways. Where I think, when you're retired, or like you say, when you're trying to start a business but you're not working as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you.
I think self-imposed deadlines sometimes are more difficult as well.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like
definitely.
even though you kind of say, right, I'll set myself this deadline, I'll get this done in an hour, or I'll get this done in half a day. And then that because you've said it yourself, that it can creep on, and it doesn't necessarily matter.
No. When you haven't got anybody to
and it makes you feel guilty, right? When you don't actually achieve that deadline, because you're like, but I've set it for myself, so why?
Or the other thing is you can let it slip because nobody knows that you've set that deadline for yourself, so you can get yourself off of it.
So you can cheat a bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks for that, Judy. Is there anything anybody else wanted to share?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that one. I think accountability is the big thing here. When we set deadlines for ourselves, they slip by and we pretend they don't happen.
Yeah.
I find I have to tell somebody. If I tell somebody, I'm more likely to do it. Don't you think?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I've experienced that one myself. Absolutely. Thanks, Susan. And Sian?
Just what we were talking about, for me, the procrastination is often linked to the language that I use about myself. And I know I can sometimes feel overwhelmed, but as you know, it's the belief that I have about myself, and then the emotion that is attached to that. And even though I know now, having done coaching, where that's come from, and those triggers, it's still kind of reacting to those triggers and being really mindful that I need I need to actively work on the language, the script that's running through my head about me, which often is that it acts as that barrier, which is procrastination. It's like described in one of my books as, am I procrastinating or am I overstimulating myself because I've got this belief about myself, and then the emotional fear that's attached to it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And that's another good thing as well, because procrastination doesn't necessarily mean that you're not doing anything, and it can mean that you keep yourselves very busy, but you're very busy doing the things that aren't getting you towards where you want to be. So unless you are sat down watching a box set on Netflix, that's entirely different. But sometimes I know I've in the past done this with my business, is I've spent time doing things thinking I'm keeping myself busy, but I'm not actually sort of making the progress that I need to be, because I'm just doing the wrong things but still busy. So that can play into it. Thank you. Anybody got anything else they wanted to share?
Yeah, so for us, we had actually in our group 2 main kind of arches. So consistency with what we want to achieve. It was something that was very, like, I was struggling with, Anna was struggling with, and the other one was feeling overwhelmed. And it was in the sense of, so Tracy was saying about feeling overwhelmed in terms of the business and how to organize and spending a lot of time thinking as opposed to doing. And for me, and I got cut short, that it was the case that I want to achieve so many things, but the strategies that I implement, it turns out that they're not necessarily the right ones. So dealing with that guilt of first either not achieving, implementing a different strategy, or skipping, maybe not being consistent enough with the elements that we do, is always like in the back of my mind, at least. So it's something that I feel like I liked what you've said in terms of the feedback instead of the failure. And that's kind of a strategy that I want to implement, but at the same time, just dealing with the emotion as opposed to, and the reality of implementing those things is just a bit tricky. I find it tricky.
So is it just a case that you are taking on too much, Alia?
Yes. I was discussing with my partner, and I always tend to try to aim for, so it's like a dodgeball game where I'm trying to grab all the balls and I can't, like, I'm trying to physically stop myself, but apparently I'm grabbing the balls that I'm not supposed to do. So yeah.
I think if you've got big ambitions and lots of things that you want to do, it's very easy to overwhelm yourself with trying to do everything at the same time. And that's where it can be counterproductive, and as we've already talked about, that overwhelm can keep you stuck, because you're then struggling as if to know, I don't know what to start with, I don't know what to do first. And you can waste as much I've been in this position as well, you can waste as much time jumping between one thing and another, trying to do everything, as if you just focused on one thing at a time. So whether that idea of trying to prioritize things for yourself as to what is the most important thing to do, and just focus on one thing at a time. So I read something a few years ago about something that people seem to suffer from a lot. And when I had my days as a project manager, I know this was a problem, because you'd got so many things going on at the same time. You get, I think it's called context fatigue or something. I'm not quite sure that's right. But that people can actually, where there's this idea that, especially as women, that we can multitask. We can to a certain extent, but there's a limit to that. And context switching, that's what I was trying to think of, is that when you're trying to do lots of things, you're having to switch from one thing, switch your brain to the next thing, and then on and on and on. And our brains aren't kind of wired like that. And it can take you a certain amount of time to actually get into a subject or into a conversation or whatever it is that you're doing, before you've actually kind of caught up with where you're at. And if you're constantly doing that, And I think there was actually a study done into how much time was wasted with people context switching at the moment. And it was days of people's work time that were wasted from trying to switch from one thing to another. So the best advice that they came out with from that is roughly the optimal time for people to concentrate on anything at any one time is about 90 minutes. So if you have got things to do, it's a good idea to shut yourself. I know we can shut ourselves away quite easily at the moment with lockdown, but if you go back into an office environment, if you've got the luxury of doing this, is to actually block out 90-minute chunks in your diary just to focus on one thing without any interruptions. Because I know one trap I used to get into when I worked as a project manager is I had the automatic alerts pop up on my emails. And even if you're in the middle of something and you see an email pop up, it's very easy to then just go and answer that email and then come back to it. Whereas you'd be doing yourself more of a favour to actually just ignore it, switch your email off for that 90 minutes and focus on the one thing. So I don't know if that helps at all, Alia, if you're trying to sort of juggle too many things in one go.
Yeah, but how, because it's my question, yeah, that helps a lot actually in focusing on a specific thing, but sometimes the specific thing that I'm focusing on is not necessarily the right thing at the right time. So
Yeah.
how do you cope with that, especially knowing and learning that after you've done the element or trying to?
Some of that comes down to how you're planning out your time, I think. Do you actually plan a diary out for a week or plan out your goals and what you want to achieve over a few months?
I used to do that. I've started doing it in terms of what I kind of want to. It's more so in terms of habits because I've realized I've told you in the text, like my health wasn't that great and I kept on prioritizing and focusing on work more than
Yeah.
my personal life. So I've tried to scale that down and try to keep a focus on it. So I have kind of elements that I want to be consistent with and achieve as much as possible. Not long time term goals because I understand I don't work that way. So every day I'm setting a task to kind of achieve or what I want to do. And then the rest kind of get filled in basically. So it might be in conjunction with something that I want to achieve as an overall goal for, let's say, the next week or the next month. So that's.
And that one task that you want to achieve on that particular day, are you setting yourself a time limit for that, or is it just as long as it takes to do it?
No, I don't. Depends. It depends on the tasks. It's more so I want to achieve it because if I set myself a time and I exceed it,
Yeah.
then I feel bad about it. Or if I just want at least one task to be achieved and then the rest, I know that I have momentum afterwards to do it, basically.
I was just thinking if that one task takes you 10 hours to do in a day, then that's when it's going to start impacting on you prioritizing your health and time with family and things like that. So whether it's worth thinking about that you set yourself some time limits in terms of, I appreciate there's probably a task you want to get done in a day, but it's what it's costing you to do that.
Yeah.
And have a think about that and whether you do need to set some limits on the amount of time that you're working. And it's been very easy with lockdown to get sucked into doing longer hours than we normally do. I know you were working from home a lot anyway, Alia, but for people that normally are working in an office where they've found they're working from home a lot more, it's very easy to end up sat at your desk working longer hours than you normally would do because you haven't got that element of I've got to get home at a certain time or to beat the traffic or whatever reason, that you can just easily sit there a lot longer than you need to. So it's just maybe thinking about a different way of doing things and reevaluating what the most important things and making sure that you're doing things like looking after your health.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else got anything they want to share before we move on? No? Okay. Thank you all for sharing that. So the next couple of things I want to talk about. So This kind of ties in a little bit, but it might just give you a different way of thinking about what is stopping you. I put a post in my Facebook group a couple of weeks ago about superconductivity, which you might be wondering what that's got to do with personal development. But when you think about electricity going through a superconductor, the reason that it's so efficient is that it doesn't meet any resistance as it's flowing through, and if the electricity did meet resistance, it would actually sap and take some of that energy out of the system. I'm not an electrician or a physicist, so that's probably a very oversimplified view of what that is. But effectively, what I'm trying to say is that life will be free flowing until you start to meet some resistance that's in your way. And those things that we're resisting can often sap us of energy, keep us stuck, stop us getting on with things. So it can be worth having a think about those things in your life that you might be resisting. And I know for me, when I first started my coaching business, just to give you an example of what resistance might look like, because of limiting beliefs that I'd got when I started this about 4 years ago, I didn't feel like I was good enough to do it. So as a result, I was resisting talking to people about what I did. So I wasn't telling people that I was a coach. I wasn't trying to make connections with people, to talk to them, to then talk to them about me being a coach. So as you can imagine, if you're not talking to anybody, they're not going to know what you're doing, and they're not going to want to be your clients. So because I was resisting talking to people, my business wasn't getting off the ground. So I identified that I was resisting talking to people, and then had to address what was underlying that in terms of the beliefs I had about myself and the fears that I was holding. And then once I got rid of those, then that resistance disappeared and I've carried on. So it can be worth sort of having a think about what you're resisting. Another example, a client of mine was out of work, and she wasn't, this was probably it was a year ago because it was the start of lockdown. She wasn't applying for new jobs, and we got to the bottom of the fact that she wasn't applying because she was worried that she wasn't going to get the jobs, because she was worried that people wouldn't think she was good enough. So she was resisting applying for jobs, but underlying that was a feeling of not being good enough. So it's just worth looking at where the blocks are in your life for you not doing things, and where that resistance is being hit and what's causing it. Okay. So, and sometimes it can just be as simple as we just feel uncomfortable doing something, and that can be the resistance. So it can just be about understanding what's making you feel uncomfortable about doing something. That could be fear or even physical uncomfortableness. But does that kind of give anybody any insights, or anybody got any comments to make about that? No. Okay. So on to motivation. So motivation can stop us doing things just because we can't be bothered to do it, or it's too difficult to do it, lots of different reasons. So has anybody come up with issues about motivation to get on with things? Because I know I have in the past at points. Yeah. Okay. And it could be that we're just not interested in doing things. So I'm sure we've all got examples of this. It could be, I know for Susan, it's obviously going to be housework, I think. So, and for me, in my business, it's my accounts. I hate doing all of the work that I need to do for my accounts, and I will put it off at all costs. And it's not a very nice expression, but have anybody heard of the expression of, when you've got things to do, swallow the frog first? So there's always a horrible task that you've got to do, which is the frog. So if you do that task first, it frees you up for the rest of the day, because it's not a very nice thing to eat, unless you particularly like eating frogs. But so if you can get rid of that frog first, it makes the rest of the meal much nicer. So if I've got my accounts to do, I have to have it as the first thing on that day to do, otherwise I just keep putting it off. And the other thing about those things that we keep putting off is they'll just keep draining our energy as well. So going back to that analogy of the superconductor is that if we're putting off things, it's just a drain on our energy, so that things aren't free flowing in our lives. So has anybody else got any examples of things that they just hate doing and they just put off at all costs? Or is it just me? Just me then, fair enough. And for things like that,
I do have something to say about that. I do put things off. I still go into work. I work in healthcare, and there are charts that I don't want to deal with. So I put them aside, and then I pick a day and I tackle them all.
Yeah, that's good.
Because they're time consuming or, you know, detail oriented, and they're not a priority, but they still need to be done. So yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, it's a good idea to kind of tackle it all in one go. Just get it out of the way. Yeah, that's great. Cool. Anybody, anything else? Nope. Okay, just me and oh, Daniela. Was that you, Daniela?
Yeah. No, I think somebody else was trying to talk, but yeah, I'm quite.
I was just going to say getting up early.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at getting up early, and I would probably do a lot more and just be in a better state of mind if I just got up early instead, because I put it off and I kind of worry about, or again, procrastinate. Well, I could be doing this.
Yeah.
That's I've always struggled with that. I've got better. I've got much better, but I feel that I worry or have anxiety about the day to swallow the frog or do the difficult tasks. I look at, I've got this to do today, I've got that to do, I've got to face that person today, I've got to sort this out. So I delay getting up. And that impacts my day. So yeah, that's what I struggle with sometimes.
Well, I was about to mention something after we'd finished this part that might actually help you then, Suki.
Oh, okay.
So, and I know that I was talking to Daniela about this earlier in the week. So, has anybody heard of the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. I shared a video in a Facebook group, but I will share it in my main one. Do you understand what it is then, Suki?
Yeah, I think so. I do like her. So she's that your brain is wired in such a way that, because you talk yourself out of it. Whereas if you do a countdown, I've instilled it now, but just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just don't think about it. Yeah. You're just giving yourself time to back out of it.
Yeah. You can come up with excuses and reasons as to why you're not going to do something. So as Suki was saying, if you just, like, for example, if Suki's going to get out of bed in the morning, or anybody's got a task to do that they don't really want to, is just think about doing that task and just decide that you're going to do it, and then just count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just get out of the chair, out of bed, or whatever it is, and get on and do it. And that can be quite effective for just getting you out of a bit of a stuck state. So maybe give that another go, Suki, see how that goes.
I will.
All right, thanks, Suki. Daniela.
Mine was a fairly small one. When Antonia was talking about charts, it just made me think around you know, every month I have to submit a purchasing log of transactions on the organizational credit card, and unless I've actually kept it up to date as I've been going along making payments, depends on the volume I've had to make. This is for visas for overseas recruits. So I know when the day looms when finance are going to ask me for it, and I still keep putting it off because I know I've got all that backlog of stuff. It's easy enough. It's boring.
Exactly. And that's another one of those things that, again, I do similar things with my accounts, that if I kept a log of receipts and invoices as they cropped up, my life would be a lot easier. But I just think, I can't be bothered to do that. So there's a double procrastination there, that I haven't done the stuff on a daily basis to make my life easier. And then I don't like actually and procrastinate about doing my accounts on a monthly basis anyway. So a double whammy sometimes. Thanks, Daniela. Anybody, anything?
Sorry.
Judy.
It's a very domesticated, because my life is domestic these days, obviously. Sort of rule, and I don't know where it comes from, but somebody suggested it to me and it works very well, is if I've got a small task that I'm putting off, put the kettle on to make a cup of tea and do it while the kettle boils. And then have a cup of tea. and sort of like a 2-minute rock. And it, you know, it's those silly things that you put off, but they irritate you every time, you know, and that I find works really well for me. That right, I'll have a cup of tea, but while the kettle's boiling in, I'll do X, Y, and Z. A simple thing, you know, like put the washing on or something. And then you enjoy your cup of tea because you like you say, you've taken the weight of that task to be done away from yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's done now, and you can have your cup of tea. So so I do use that a lot. Which,
it's interesting. I've actually started doing that when I've got little things like that to do, stick the kettle on and then go and do something else. So yeah, that does work definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Judy. Anybody got anything else? Nope. Okay. So just talk a little bit more about motivation. So if you are putting something off, sometimes it can help to look at the bigger picture of where you want to get to. So I can use the example that I gave earlier about when I was having a bit of a mini battle with myself about going for a run yesterday. So the reason I managed to get myself out of that shall I, shan't I mode was I took a step back and to just remind myself of where I wanted to get to and the reason I was doing it. So I hadn't really been running much for the last, or I haven't really done any exercise for the last 6 months. So for the last 6 weeks, I've been building up my fitness again to get my runs back up to 5K. So that's partly to get fitter and also partly to lose weight because like I think some other people have done over lockdown, I've put some weight on. So I managed to get my backside out the front door because I just reminded myself if I don't do it, I'm going to be behind. Thank you, Susan. I'm going to be behind in getting towards my fitness and health goals. So so it can be a good idea to sort of step back and remind yourself why you're doing those things, and that can give you the motivation to actually get on and do it. Okay. Then one other thing about motivation, which is understanding a bit more about how motivation works, because I don't think many people understand the principles behind it and how our brains work with it. So with motivation, there are basically 2 different types. There's away from motivation and towards motivation. So I'll explain that a bit more in a second. But away from motivation is very good to get us kick-started to start achieving our goals. But there can be a point where that wears off and you need to replace it with something else. So I'm going to use the example of losing weight just because it's an easy one to talk about. But if anybody has been overweight and wanted to lose a few pounds, usually the motivation for doing that will be something that you want to get away from. So you want to get away from the size that you are, you want to get away from being unfit or unhealthy, you want to get away from eating a poor diet. There could be lots of things that you want to move away from. So those are really good for getting kick-started. So for me, it's because I'm fed up of not being able to fit in my clothes anymore that I've kind of decided to do that. Sick of being unfit, that kind of stuff. But there will come a point where that will wear off. So what you then also need to do is have a towards goal, because if you start off with the idea that you're just going to lose weight, there's no measure on how much that is, how long it's going to take. So if you have a towards goal, you'll have an idea in mind of what weight you want to be or what size clothes you want to be, what sort of diet you want to be eating. And when that away from motivation wears off, you've got the towards motivation of where you want to get to that will keep you going. So just to give you an example of how that can work with weight loss, which if you've tried to lose weight, you might actually see yourself in this one. So say I've decided, as I have done, I'm going to lose weight, and I start running and I eat a healthy diet. So I'm counting my calories and making sure that I'm eating a certain number of calories a day, and I'm doing really well for the first 4 weeks. So I've been losing 2 pounds a week consistently. And then I get to week 5 and I think, oh, I've been doing really well. So Friday night treat, I'm just going to have a glass of wine or 2 just to treat myself and just break my diet a little bit, and it'll be fine. It's only one little break. And then the next day I get back onto my diet and my fitness regime. And then the following Friday night I think, oh, well, I had a glass of wine last week, so I'll have another one this week, and I'll have a chocolate bar as well because I deserve it, because I've done really, really well. And then little by little you'll start to see that you break it a little bit more, and then because you have lost some weight, you find that you're far enough away from where you were before that it's not a problem anymore. And then little by little, you start to put that weight back on again. And you can end up back where you started, or in some cases, even worse because you put on even more weight. So that's where, if you're just using away from motivation, it can actually wear off eventually, and you can end up back where you started. So whereas if I'd set myself a what we call a towards goal for towards motivation of the size that I want to get to, or the clothes I want to get into, or I'm going to a birthday party and I want to get into a particular dress, something like that, something to work towards, that would then have kept my motivation going, because if I had had that glass of wine on a Friday night, I might have then had a bit of a word with myself and say, well, that's not going to help me get to where I want to be, and probably would have got me back on the wagon. That's probably the wrong phrase to use if I'm talking about glasses of wine, but you know what I mean. That would get me back on track to actually start working towards those health and fitness goals again. So does that make sense? Yep. Everybody see themselves a little bit in something that might have happened in the past in that? Because I know I certainly can. Yeah. So I'm going to give you another exercise to do. So has everybody got something in mind that they want to achieve, whether it's like a work goal or something in their personal life? Has everybody got something? Doesn't matter how big or small it is. Yep. Everybody got something? Okay. So think about what that goal is, where you want to get to. And like I said, the away from goals are very good for, away from motivation, sorry, is very good for getting you started. But you need a towards motivation to keep you going. So if you've got that goal in mind of however big or small it is that you want to achieve, then have a think about what is your away from motivation that makes you want to start doing it. And then also think about your towards motivation of where you want to get to that will keep you going. Is that okay? Everybody understand that? Shake your head if you don't. Yep. Okay, great. So I'll give you 2 minutes to do that, and then we'll have a chat about it afterwards. Okay. Can everybody hear that music? So it'll be better than silence. Yeah, okay. Has everybody got something? Yep. think what I'll do is I'll drop you into another breakout room just so you can just sort of share what you came up with. So you can just sort of say what your goal or whatever it is you want to do or achieve is, and then just talk about what your away from motivation is to get going with that, and then what your towards motivation will be, or a goal towards goal even that will keep you going after the away from motivation's worn off. Okay, great. So I'll pop you into the same breakout rooms again, and I think some of you ran out of time a bit last time, so I'll give you a little bit longer. So I'll give you say about 8 minutes this time, just to give you plenty of time to have a chat about it. Everybody clear on what they need to do? Yep. Okay, great. I will see you in 8 minutes then. Welcome back. So how was that? Is that helpful to talk that through?
Yeah.
Anybody happy to share with anything they talked about, or do they get, is looking for towards motivation a new thing for some people that they'd be happy to share and talk about? Susan?
Yeah, we had a great conversation, about looking for a new job. I mean, in the pandemic, everyone is doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to call out particular issues, but what we talked about was reframing. And I think, I mean, that was just as applicable to me about reframing my motivation about why I'm not completing the task.
Okay.
As you personally know, Shuna, because we're in a group together,
Yeah.
I have been not completing my task of hiring a virtual assistant. And I don't know why I haven't gone after that task. I desperately need help in my business. And yet I seem to have a block about actually doing it, because somehow it's as though somebody else won't do the work as well as I can, except I'm not doing the work either. So the work isn't getting done. So anybody else would do it better than not getting the work done at all, right? And so somehow it's as though I'm thinking, of course somebody would do the work just fine. That's their job too. And I'm having this blockage. And so I said to the person in my group, reframe this as they want you in this job, believe in yourself, believe that you are the right candidate for the job. And I realized that completely applies to myself too.
Yes.
I am postponing my task because I'm not believing in myself. I'm not believing in the person I want to hire. And I need to reframe myself as well. And I am setting myself a goal, Shuna. We have a week and a half till you and I meet again.
Yeah.
Please be my accountability.
I'll be
And ask me when we meet again that I have completed my task.
I will. Might also be worth, you're welcome. It might also be worth asking yourself what you're resisting then in that case, to see what's underlying that. So why are you resisting?
It feels as though I'm scared somebody else won't support me, won't do my tasks properly. But I know that's not true.
No.
And if the person doesn't work out, I'll fire them and find someone else, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Great insight. Thanks for sharing that, Susan. And I will be calling you out on that in a couple of weeks.
I depend on you, Shuna.
Cool. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anybody else got any insights from that? No. Anybody come up with a new plan of how they're going to approach something? Antonia, were you going to say something?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes. I talked about there was construction done in my house, and they made the bathroom bigger, but it took some room out of my hobby room.
Right.
And it's been like that for about a year, and I've been walking around and hitting my shins on boxes, and there isn't as much room in there. But I can't seem to decide what needs to shift, what needs to go. Something needs to go. I don't have the room for all that furniture. And so the away from is feeling unsettled. I'm not organized. I don't know where things are. But what my toward is 1 hour a night just work on something small, and I can listen to music or a podcast, just make it a little bit more easier, like satisfying, and it's also a little bit more measurable if I do 1 hour a night.
Absolutely. It can only be, sometimes only just needs to be little bits, doesn't it, to make a difference?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And
I've overwhelmed myself because it is a huge task.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. And that's another thing that away froms can keep you a bit stuck about, is you're just focusing on the negative aspect of it as well. So sometimes by focusing on how it can be different and how it will be better in the future can often help us get motivated towards it as well. Okay. Great. Thank you, Antonia. Anybody, anything else? Nope. Okay, thanks. So there's another couple of things that I wanted to go over, but I mentioned at the very start that I'd offer an opportunity for people to carry on a conversation with me if they wanted to. So it could be that if you didn't feel comfortable enough to say something on the call, we could have a private one-to-one session together, or just anything else that you wanted to talk through. Because sometimes having the tips and strategies is one thing, but then being able to apply them is another. So if I can help you with any of that, then I'm more than happy to do that. So I'd like to help everybody on the call. So I'm offering a free 1 hour session if anybody's interested. And I am just going to drop a link into the chat. So I've got an online diary, so it just makes it a lot easier for you to book in a session that's convenient for you. So I freed up some time in my diary so that you can do that. So there's the link if you want to go and book something in with me. So it might be that I can just give you a little bit more insight into things that are holding you back, or just give you some advice on anything really, or anything else you want to talk about. It doesn't have to be about procrastination, but you're more than welcome to book in a session with me. So the link's there if you want to. Okay, great, thanks for that. So last couple of things that I just want to talk about before we finish. So other reasons, again, as we've already identified, some of these things can be very interlinked sometimes, but just to sort of highlight another couple of things that can keep us stuck and procrastinating about things. One I come across quite a lot with people that I work with is other people's expectations or other people's demands on your time. I find especially as mothers that your family tend to take up all of your time, and what you want out of life tends to come a bit lower down the list. And trying to keep everybody else happy can sometimes turn out to be a bit of an excuse to not do things. And especially if it's those things that will make you happier and more fulfilled in life. So start to have a think about if there's any areas in your life where other people's demands are taking over and you're not demanding time for yourself or things for yourself out of it, and that can open up some things that you could do differently. Okay, does that resonate with anybody? And what can tie into that is what I call boundaries, which is something I talk a lot about in my coaching. But has anybody come across that phrase before? Or does anybody not know what I'm talking about? So boundaries are basically, it's basically like a line you draw in the sand of how you want people to treat you. So one really good exercise, I won't get you to do it on the session now, but it's something that you could do for yourselves afterwards, is write down a list of how you want people to treat you. Because sometimes it's something you don't actually consciously think about, is about how you want people to treat you. It's just something that we do naturally. So if you've got things like you want people to treat you with respect and with kindness, with love, that kind of thing. And then if you find that all of your time is being devoted to everybody else and you're happy doing that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But if you find that there are things in life you're not doing for yourself or not making time for yourself, start to have a think about if people aren't treating you with the respect that you want, or aren't treating you with the kindness that you want because they're making so many demands on your time. And then start to think about how you could do things a little bit differently to make sure that they are respecting you. There's a quote I really like from a guy called Stephen Covey, Sean's heard this many times before, where he says that he teaches people how to treat him by what he will allow. So you don't have to sort of have stand-up rows with people, but sometimes you can just let people know that the way they've been making demands on your time just isn't okay anymore, and just sort of demand that time back for yourself so you can then get on with whatever it is you want to do. Does that help anybody? Yeah. Okay. Anybody got any questions about that, or is that okay? No? Okay, great. And then lastly, sometimes for no apparent reason, we can just end up doing stuff that serves no purpose to get us to where we want to be in life, but we just carry on doing it anyway. I think a common thing for a lot of people these days is just endlessly scrolling through Facebook and the internet, because our phones are there always with us, and it can be a massive distraction. And I think I might have mentioned this one or two of you on the phone on calls before. Has everybody watched the film Social Dilemma? No? Yeah. It was a bit of an eye-opener. I knew some of this stuff happened with social media, but if you haven't seen it, it's just basically about the tactics that social media companies use to keep you hooked onto using their platforms. And it was a little bit horrifying to see some of the things that they do and just how easily we can all get sucked into it. So if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a watch. And it got a lot of people that were ex-employees of places like Twitter and Facebook. And there was quite a senior guy that used to work for Twitter who won't let his children go onto social media, which I think speaks volumes that an ex-employee won't even allow his kids to do it. So yeah, watch that one. But yes, a lot of our time can get sucked into doing nothing in particular, and we can end up giving ourselves a bit of a hard time. So another useful exercise that you can do, and again, I'll get you to do this afterwards if you want to, is write yourself two lists. Write a stop doing list and a start doing list. So write down everything that you want to stop doing that's draining your time, that's absolutely no use to you whatsoever. So whether that is spending 2 hours a day scrolling through Facebook, or watching box sets on Netflix or whatever. And then write down a start doing list, so those things that you want to do possibly on a daily basis that would be more useful to you and a bit more fulfilling and get you what you want out of life. So whether that's making something like meditation or doing yoga or doing some exercise or something, a daily practice if you've been putting that off. And then just keeping a track of making sure that you're sticking to that you're stopping doing on your stop doing list and you start doing what's on your start doing list. But I find that a useful exercise to do. Okay. Any questions about that? No. Okay. So last couple of things then. So I hope you've all got something useful out of the last couple of hours. Good. And so what what I'd like you to do is write down one thing that you're going to do that you've been putting off after we get off this call. So just one, it doesn't have to be anything major, but just write down something that you've been putting off for ages that you just want to get done, and sort of make a commitment to yourself about when you'll get it done by. Okay. So thank you, Anna. So running and readings, is that your start doing? Is that what you're going to do after the call? Yeah, great, good stuff. So have you been doing any running so far, or is it something you want to get back into?
No, I bought running sneakers for a week ago.
Yeah.
And my goal every day, I'm just watching them, looking at them. I love them, but I don't know how to start it. Okay. Now I'm going to start.
Have you ever done any?
And reading as well.
Sorry, Anna.
And reading as well. I already set up alarm, inspired by Alexandra, one of our team member. And yeah, I set up alarm from tomorrow. And thank you very much for this, for everything.
That's cool. Yeah, well, you're welcome. That's great. With running, have you ever done any running before?
Only once in my life, around 10 minutes.
Okay. Have you heard
and
of?
it was exhausting. I had.
Are you based in the UK?
London, yes.
Yeah. Have you heard of an app called Couch to 5K?
No.
If you,
Couch to 5K.
yeah, it's just, I used it last year when I started running, and it's just great if you've never done any running before. It just builds it up gently to get you to a point where you can run for 20. I think by the end of it you can run for 25 minutes non-stop, but it kind of talks you through when you need to stop running and start running in small chunks to actually build it up, because that's the only way I would have ever got running, because there's no way, if somebody said to me just go and run for 20 minutes a year ago, I'd have just said absolutely no way. But it builds it up gently so it doesn't feel like it's this big thing that you've got to do, so that might help. But it's a free app to use. Sorry,
Sorry,
Sean.
I was going to interject. I'm a member of a running club, and I started that 0 to 5K. That's how they attracted new members, and it's definitely the way to do it. I never had. I aspired to be a runner, but never had anything beyond that. And I tried to do it myself and just run, and it's just impossible. So the 0 to 5K is the best way to do it, and it worked for me. I never ran in my life. I always gave up. And at this point, not that I'm planning on doing any more, but I've run 4 half marathons, which if you had said to me when I was 15, I would run a half marathon, I would have laughed at you and laughed at you. And it was only because of doing that app, or that in chunks. You don't give up, because you build up to it in the correct way. Nobody can go from being not running to suddenly run. It just doesn't happen. But I think we give ourselves a hard time when our body doesn't do what we want to do. So sorry, I just felt I had to interject there. Sorry, Sheena.
No, I second that. I started it last year in lockdown. I think it had record number of downloads, the BBC one. I highly recommend it. I went up to 7 weeks and then I stopped it because I got the new job, but I highly recommend it. It's very good.
And it's good because it's a program that you do 3 times a week, so it keeps you on track to kind of committing to do those 3 times a week. I've put the name of it in the chat for you, Anna. But that's great, running and reading. So I see lots of other of you have been putting comments in oh yeah, I know Susan, you were doing your 10-minute bike cycling a week, so that's great to keep that up. Antonia, definitely tackling your craft room, that's great. And Sean, got a task to do, and going back to planning weekly meals, that's great. And Alia, oh yeah, I know we've talked about that before about driving, so that's brilliant, excellent, all good stuff. So has everybody got something that they've committed to? Yeah, brilliant, good stuff. And one last thing then, just really quickly, and thanks Suki. So reading, yeah, that's one thing that we can let go. I know that's something I need to get back to as well. Great. So just very quickly, is anybody happy to share what their biggest takeaway or biggest insight they've got from this afternoon session is? Anybody just jump in when you're ready. Anybody?
I think for me, it was with my tasks, it was either or. Right. And now I see I can actually incorporate 1 hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's what I got out of it.
Yeah. Because we can often get stuck in a trap of just telling ourselves we haven't got time to do certain things, but that's the advantage sometimes of writing that stop doing, start doing list, is you suddenly realise how much time you are wasting doing those things that are serving you no purpose whatsoever, and then all of a sudden it can free up some time to actually do what you really want to do instead. But yeah, that's great. Thank you, Antonia. Anybody else want to share what their biggest insight or takeaway is from today?
Yeah.
Hannah, yeah.
I think for me, it was actually just joining the session and talking about it.
Okay.
So I think we can all probably feel guilty of, oh, I need to do that, or I need to stop procrastinating, or how am I going to do that? Oh, I'll procrastinate thinking about it, kind of thing. And so actually just joining it on a Sunday afternoon, I felt a bit funny doing that, because it almost feels like personal development sometimes feels a bit worky, doesn't it? It feels like these kinds of things you do in a work week, and I'm on Zoom calls all week, so it feels like I'm coming to work. But actually, and I could have just not come because I'm not accountable to it. I'm not, I'm not going to be told off if I didn't join today. So actually just taken away that, you know, talking about it and hearing other people going through the same thing drives you to do something about it.
Yeah, that's really good.
And
Yeah.
hopefully I'll speak to you again soon.
Yep, that's great. Love to too. Thank you. And I think that's one of the things, that's why I said at the start to acknowledge yourself and congratulate yourself for being here, because not everybody takes that action to do something. And I know I've heard people say before that even just being on a call like this and understanding that they're not the only person that has these strange thought processes and manages to keep themselves going round in circles with things, even just knowing that can be a help, that you're not alone, that everybody else does it as well, which can help too. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Hannah, and thank you for being here. Okay.
Thanks,
Judy?
Yeah, I was just going to say what you just said, that I think that the biggest takeaway I've got is that, thank God for that, I'm not the only person in the world that does this.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not just my age either.
No.
There's a lot of people on here a lot younger than me, they do it, you know, so it's not just an age thing. As I say, I think it does get worse with age and with losing that structure of work and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's just a person thing, you know,
Yeah.
and that feels good, really.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and it's also understanding that we're all going through the same struggles and the same fears and beliefs that keep us not doing what we really want to do, and it's getting to the bottom of those that's key. But yeah, thanks for sharing, Judy. Susan?
I unfortunately have to jump off into another meeting right now because it's right at 11 a.m. my time here in Colorado. But I really got a lot out of this, Shuna. I want to tell you, I really feel my motivation got a kickstart today.
Oh, that's good.
And I clarified for myself the tasks that I have been procrastinating on.
Brilliant.
And two things that you talked about were really big for me. Talking about overwhelm versus belief versus fear. That was really clarifying for me.
Oh, good.
And I thought that was really an important concept to help me. I really clarified that it was overwhelm for me.
Right.
And as opposed to a belief or a fear.
Yeah.
And that was just hugely clarifying.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And the other strategy you talked about just right here at the end, and I want to encourage you to spend more time on that the next time you do this, is your start doing list and your stop doing list.
Yeah, we'll do.
I'd really like to have spent more time on that because I'm really intrigued by that.
Okay, sure.
I may chat with you about that a little offline because I think that would actually be hugely helpful to me.
Right. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say those were a couple of the concepts that really stuck in my brain that I'm going to take away from this session. And I'm sorry I have to jump off.
No, thank you for taking the time to be here, Susan. I know you're busy, so that's great. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
I really enjoyed this, and Suki and Sean are my new best friends because we spent all these breakout rooms together, and it was great talking with all of you.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks when you'll have a VA, Susan.
Yes, you are going to keep on me about that, Shuna. Thank you all so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Susan.
Sorry, Suki, did I talk over you then? Were you trying
to?
No,
it's fine. That's fine.
That's okay, cool. Great. Anybody else got anything that they want to take, or big takeaway for them? Alia and then Daniela.
So for me, it was really inspirational when you said about like revising my goals or reviewing my goals, because it took a long time to actually look at them. But also in the sense of reframing, rewording, re-looking at our the tasks that we have, and kind of taking a different approach to them. Trying a different thing is really important, and it's nice that you've asked us to actually mention one of the things that we want to achieve and how we will achieve that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alia. Good to see you again. Daniela.
So it was, I think a lot of this was definitely wrapped up into the mindset bit for me. And And actually, when Susan was sort of talking about the accountability, even for the smallest thing, just to say to somebody, look, that's what I'm planning to do. I don't know what it even sort box that's next to me. And maybe just say to someone, I'm going to get that done by then. Can you just check in with me?
Yeah,
And it's okay if it's my husband, if you if I ask him to do that. So yeah,
absolutely. Great. Good stuff. Thanks, Daniela. Anybody else got anything else they want as an insight they're taking away with them? Nope. Okay. Great. So thank you all again for your time and your input this week, because you sort of sharing your thoughts and experiences makes this much more interesting for me than just me wittering away. So I always love to hear people's feedback and what they're getting out of it. So thank you for that. And yeah, so that I'll just drop the link in again just because it's disappeared off the screen. So if somebody does want to book in a call with me to talk about anything for an hour, then please book a session with me, and I'll be more than happy to. And I look forward to seeing all of you on there, hopefully. Like I said, I'll be running these workshops different workshops, but I'll be running them twice a month on a Sunday afternoon and then one evening in the week. So they'll be on my Facebook page, and I'll publish them through LinkedIn, so hopefully you can find them that way. And also I've recorded this session, and you'll all get a copy of the recording, so if there's anything you wanted a bit more clarity on, you can watch it back as well. But thank you all very much, and I hope to see you all again soon. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.